Free the land, revolutionary greetings. Haki Shakur coming back at you again today with a brand new topic that I want to touch on. This is more of a you know relevant news, relevant things that's going on right now. Uh, Year 2019, 400 years since our first ancestors were brought here to Virginia in 1619 Black August. Um, a lot of controversy is going on surrounding reparations. So this video is basically about reparations and my response to a new movement that has sprung up called ADOS, the American Descendants of Slaves. And this is not really a debate video. This is just a new African perspective. You know what I'm saying? Like when I see things put out there, I like to, try to, clarify things from a new African perspective. You see what I'm saying? So this is not a bashing video. I'm not calling out ADOS. This is just some things I want to clarify from the new African independence movement. You see what I'm saying? Shout out to August 3rd Collective, New African People's Liberation Army, Malcolm X Grassroots Movement, NAPO, New African People's Organization, the New African Panthers, all formations and movements under the New African Independence Movement and the Provisional Government of Republic of New Africa. I'm coming to you today, from the Gabriel Prosserville District, New African People's Population. Yeah, man, just a lot of controversy been going on surrounding this ADOS movement and the little divide between them and Pan-Africans. You see what I'm saying? The little disagreements they have going on. You know what I'm saying? I don't really get too caught up into that type of stuff because, that's not how I get down. But I love to give my perspective on things from observing because we got to understand this, man. Like, we got to understand that there's path layers. You see what I'm saying? To struggles. You see what I'm saying? Our struggle here and our national oppression here in America is nothing new. This oppression been going on ever since those first ancestors, like I said, was brought here to Virginia, and even before Virginia to South Carolina in the Spanish colony, and even the indigenous nationals and the indigenous peoples who identify with peoples who've been here, who came here before all of that. What I'm saying is that when the European sparked warfare on Africa, the continent, and then sparked warfare on the continent of the Americas, you see what I'm saying, has always been a new African struggle from the existence of our ancestors being brought here from Africa. You see what I'm saying? So even up into modern times, you got to understand, there's path layers, there's movements, there's freedom fighters, there's activists, there's strategists, there's people who fought and died and laid paths for you to get to this point and to create what you're creating today. Nothing you're creating today is new. You see what I'm saying? But a lot of these new movements and these new social media activists, internet activists, bourgeoisie movements, and movements, period, that you see springing up every day in America, the so-called supposed to be for the best interests of black people, a lot of these people don't recognize the path layers. They don't recognize certain movements. And the movements that I'm saying that they don't recognize is the human rights movements, the black nationalist movements, the freedom fighting movements. You see what I'm saying? The ones who are fighting for total liberation. You see what I'm saying? Total separation, total independence. You see what I'm saying? See, these type of freedom fighters and strugglers have always been here. They're just not popularized. You see what I'm saying? But you have these popular movements, what I call mainstream movements, civil rights movements, reformist movements, you know what I'm saying, that don't, appreciate or talk about the other side of our story, the real, true revolutionary side of our story, the resistance side of our story, the movements that put it down in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, Black Liberation Army, Black Panther Party, Revolutionary Action Movement. You see what I'm saying? All African People's Socialist Party, or the All African People's Movement, period. You know what I'm talking about, with Stokely Carmichael, Kwame Ture, all these great movements that people deem as Pan-African movements. But I like to call them revolutionary nationalist movements. You see what I'm saying? Because a lot of people try to leave out the revolutionary nationalist movements. You see what I'm saying? Who are indeed Pan-African. You see what I'm saying? Because we are for the total liberation of African people globally. We're not alienating no African or whoever you identify with that's melanated skin peoples. You see what I'm saying? Or, I don't even like to use this term, but people of color. You see what I'm saying? We're not leaving out nobody. So the basis of this video that I'm trying to get the point I'm trying to get across is, the new African independence movement and our perspective, which stands on the basis of human rights. I'm talking about human rights movements that these people are not giving credit to. You see what I'm saying? But they try to steal certain things from us and from the elders and the ones who's doing time incarcerated behind their sacrifices. New African political prisoners, prisoners of war. You see what I'm saying? Y'all taking, but you're not giving credit to the path layers. You see what I'm saying? So I just wanted to get that little rant in because you must recognize those that came before you. You see what I'm saying? Because you could be doing things that go against the interests of those people. Y'all could be going against the interests of these movements who laid down the struggle, who sacrificed their lives for reparation, who sacrificed their lives for independence, who sacrificed their lives for nationhood, who sacrificed their lives for sovereignty, who sacrificed themselves in the truest sense of the word freedom, Uhuru Sasa. You see what I'm saying? You could be going against that interest. You see what I'm saying? And don't even realize it. You see what I'm saying? So this is what this video is about. The basis of human rights, the basis of reparation. This reparation struggle is not new. You see what I'm saying? Give credit where credit is due. You see what I'm saying? So let me hop on into it, man. Let me start off with Malcolm X. You know what I'm saying? Because we in the New African Independence Movement, we follow the Malcolm X doctrine. Period. Let me go ahead and say these. Let me go ahead and put this in here real quick. A couple of quotes from the Baba, Omawale, El Haj, Malik Shabazz, Malcolm X. Human rights are something you were born with. Human rights are your God-given rights. Human rights are the rights that are recognized by all nations on earth. Malcolm X. Let me throw one more quote in there for you on human rights from Malcolm X. We declare our rights on this earth to be a human being, to be respected as a human being, to be given the rights of a human being in this society, on this earth, in this day, which we intend to bring in existence by any means necessary. Period. Human rights. This is what every movement should be based on at this point. Even ADOS, you should be based on human rights. You see what I'm saying? Because it's things that are all, how can I say it? It's an ecosystem. It's a basis of strategy based on these principles and ecosystem, which makes things all interconnected. You see what I'm saying? It's things that you cannot separate. Like you can't separate Pan-Africanism, you see what I'm saying, out of what you're doing. You see what I'm saying? Now, I'm not telling people not to start movements and try to struggle for black people. This is not what I'm trying to tell you. You have the human right to start any movement you want to start. The elders, everybody, always teach us this. Yes, start new movements. You see what I'm saying? But understand there's political aspects to these movements. It's political objectives, agendas, goals. You see what I'm saying? That you should be all interconnecting as one when you're fighting this struggle for reparations and equal rights. You see what I'm saying? It should be based on a human rights stance and objectives and goals, people. You see what I'm saying? Human rights. You see what I'm saying? So that's all I'm basically trying to state from a New African perspective. You see what I'm saying? Moving right along. A lot of these movements are not doing that. You see what I'm saying? They're starting their own beliefs, goals, agendas, and objectives that are separating the total struggle for human rights and black liberation, which is a no-no. You see what I'm saying? That's a no-no. You see what I'm saying? You can't divide a struggle that's predicated on a global people. You see what I'm saying? This oppression, this tyranny, This terrorism, this murder, this genocide is global. It's happening to us everywhere. In the African diaspora, on the continent, in Europe, in Australia. You see what I'm saying? North America, South America, the Americas, where every black person, African person exists on this planet, this is where this oppression and genocide is taking place. There's no separation. But yes, you can use your own strategies and things of that nature to obtain what we're trying to obtain. But it has to be as a global people or as a nation of people. You see what I'm saying? But no matter where you are, a lot of these people already have nations. A lot of new Africans in America are struggling for nationhood. You have nations of people that's in the diaspora fighting for nationhood and freedom. You see what I'm saying? But you can't divide that. You see what I'm saying? You can't start confusion amongst Pan-Africans in your movement, because that's not going to get you to your goals, objectives, and agendas. You see what I'm saying? It's not going to get us reparations. So let me move right along. First of all, let me clarify this. You see what I'm saying? Let me clarify this. Let me hop on into this. Far as the African word and the slave word terminology. Let me break this down real quick. The terminology of the word African, which has a lot of controversy that's going on today, because a lot of people don't like to be called African. You see what I'm saying? And let me just distinguish this thing about calling yourself a slave or a descendant of slaves. You see what I'm saying? Let me just go ahead and clarify this real quick, man. The African word. Let's clear this up for once and for all, man. The African word. The word African is an international political term and identity. Let me say that again. African term. The term African is an international political term and identity, people. You see what I'm saying? Meaning, this term is ours. Let's just get to the point, man, so we can stop arguing over the term African. I don't care where it came from, which I do to a certain extent because I'm a historian. But it's a lot of confusion behind the origin of the word African. You see what I'm saying? But I have my beliefs on where the word African comes from, which I do not believe it comes from Europeans. You see what I'm saying? Because I've seen evidence of this word coming out of different origins that's indigenous to the continent. Period. The evidence is there. Period. You see what I'm saying? So I'm not going to argue with anybody over the word African. But let's get to the common sense and logics of the word African. It's an international political term and identity of black people globally. Period. That's all it is. You see what I'm saying? That's all it is. You see what I'm saying? It's a continent. Africa is a continent. That's the name of the continent. You see what I'm saying? It's our word. We don't use that word for so long now. It's ours. It's not the white man's. The first thing you think of when it comes to the word African, you think of black people globally. So just use it in that terms, man. You see what I'm saying? You don't have to identify with it as far as nationality, but it's a political term that us African people globally use to communicate and to identify with each other. Let me say that again. The terminology of the word African is used for African people to identify with each other globally. If you're African in the diaspora, the Caribbean islands, you see what I'm saying? If you're African on the continent, it's just a term used to identify with each other as family. Now, how hard is that to understand that, man? You see what I'm saying? And it's a human right to use the word. We can use that word based on the principles and the laws of international law of human rights. We can use that. That's what self-determination is. The number one thing of self-determination, as far as a principle, is that we have the human right to name ourselves. Every human on this planet had the human right to name themselves. These people were not who they were before they named themselves. How hard is that to get? You call yourself a Moor. You call yourself an Aborigine. You call yourself Yoruba, Igbo, Akan, Iwe. Jamaican, Haitian, Trinidadian. You see what I'm saying? All these terminologies are based, and nationalities are based on people having the human rights to name themselves. They name themselves. Just like the European nations and the European empires, that Chinese, Asian, all these different continents of people had the human right to name themselves. Then you had different nations, tribes of people who broke off from the original peoples to name themselves. Like all through Europe, all those nations broke off from the original Europeans and broke off into nations and named themselves based on the land that they obtained. You see what I'm saying? This is where you get Germans from, Italians, Brits. You see what I'm saying? All these type of people, man, they named themselves. Nobody came there and named them. They named themselves. We can take it back to Africa. All these different tribal nations of people, they named themselves. Igbo named themselves. Yoruba named themselves. This is before the white man. You see what I'm saying? These people named themselves. It was their human right to name themselves. So if I want to call myself a new African, I have the human rights to name myself a new African. You see what I'm saying? If I'm an Aborigine, I have the human right to name myself that. If I'm a Moor, I have the human right to name myself. If I'm not an African American, but if I'm a Moorish American, I have the human right to name myself that. So you see where the confusion come in at? You're really arguing over nothing. You see what I'm saying? Because under the basis of indigenous, and I'm taking it to indigenous human rights laws, all them indigenous nations that was in America and all these different various names of peoples and tribes of people in America, how do you think they got that name? They sat amongst themselves. They created a council. They created, a council of people, and they named themselves. Every indigenous nation you've seen in America pre-European invasion, these people named themselves. Nobody named them. They didn't go off a name pertaining to a certain land. They named the land, right? You see what I'm saying? They named the land. So everybody's correct. If you want to get down to the point of nationality, whatever you choose to name yourself, and if you got a land to identify with that, then that's who you are. No need to argue over it. No need to tell people who they are or try to force that on the people by calling, oh, you're a Moor, you're an Aborigine. No, in the New African Independence Movement, we don't do that. We don't force people to be New Africans because we know that human rights, under human rights, you have the human right to name yourself. You have the human right to identify with whoever you want to identify with. Period. So let's get over that. And you got to understand there's many nations and tribes of people. There were never one nation of people. Never. Never. You have the right to name your nation and to name your people under collective identity, language, land basis, man. Stop arguing over this simple stuff, man. We're never going to get free. We're supposed to be collectively helping each other. You see what I'm saying? Get our nations free. Because it's our, keyword, our nations free. No matter what you identify with. You see what I'm saying? But all people who are being oppressed that descend from the African continent or indigenous nations of this planet, people of melanated hue, you're supposed to be fighting for one to free all these nations, man. Period. On a human rights basis and struggle. This is what you're supposed to be doing. So stop arguing over this word African. You see what I'm saying? Now, the African American term, that's something different because we know that doesn't exist. You see what I'm saying? But the thing about that, they still have a human right to identify with that if they choose to. If you're a black person that wants to remain under the empire governance. You see what I'm saying? If you want to stay African American, you got to understand that's their human right. They can stay an American. You see what I'm saying? But if you're a person that identifies with being a new African, then hey, you see what I'm saying? You're automatically saying that you're not American. By me saying I'm a new African, I'm saying I'm not an American. Which I'm not. I'm not an African American, and I'm not American. No, I'm a descendant of the African continent. The continent is called Africa. New African people have a distinct and a distinct identity. And we have a distinct path. We have a distinct destiny. We have a distinct struggle that's kind of different than most struggles, but it's the same struggle. You see what I'm saying? We have a distinct one, meaning that we come from several tribes, several nations of people over there on the continent of Africa. We come from several different nations and tribes of people here on this landmass of North America. We come from different nations and tribes of people that came from the Caribbean islands. We got all mixed up together, bunched up together, procreated together through slave breeding, or willingly to breed with other tribe nations of people and things of that nature. So we became a new people, a new African people, or whatever you identify with. You see what I'm saying? Because your nation still exists. But we're fighting for those Africans who were brought here on those slave boats. This is what you got to understand, people. You have a distinct 400-year struggle of people who are fighting for those Africans who were political prisoners, prisoners of wars, brought here and captured. You see what I'm saying? And who continue to fight against this beast nation for freedom, independence, sovereignty, and nationhood. That's what a new African is. That's our human right. We're fighting for those ancestors. Nat Turner, Denmark Vesey, Charles Dessalon, Gabriel Prosser, Dismal Swamp Maroons. We're fighting for those Africans, man. That's our human right. You see what I'm saying? And let's get into this term, slave. You have to understand. These people that were captured on this land and the people that were captured on the continent, the peoples that were captured in the Caribbean islands, those were not slaves. Those were human beings. You see what I'm saying? Citizens, nationals of nations and tribes of people. They were not slaves. Now, let me break this down. The system that they were captured and taken into is called slavery. So they were enslaved human beings. They were not slaves. Stop calling your ancestors slaves. They were not slaves. They were enslaved. You see what I'm saying? Understand the terminology that you are invoking into the spiritual realm, that you're invoking into the physical realm by calling your ancestor a slave. Your ancestor was not a slave. You're not a descendant of slaves. You're a descendant of human beings from different nations and tribes. You see what I'm saying? You are descendants of human beings in different nations and tribes. Period. And these people were what? Political prisoners and prisoners of war, because that was a war when they went into Africa and took those ancestors out of Africa and relocated them to North America. Took those ancestors from the Caribbean islands and relocated them to North America. And when they went into South America, Mexico, all these different places where you seen melanated people, that was warfare. Get that in your mind. That was warfare. Just like the genocide on the Jews was warfare. What Hitler did to those Jews was warfare. What they did to your ancestors, the Ma'afa, was warfare. So the proper terminology is they were political prisoners and prisoners of war. They were not slaves. These were family members, doctors, you know what I'm saying? Workers, scientists, anything you can name that's humane. This is what those people were. You see what I'm saying? Children, mothers, and fathers. You see what I'm saying? Living amongst themselves. You see what I'm saying? So they were enslaved. The system was slavery. They wasn't slaves. So let's just get that into your psyche. Also, we know that we've been colonized for so long that we began to use this term slave because it was taught to us by our oppressor. So this is why we use this term unconsciously. That's all you're doing. When you say slave, or you saying you're a descendant of a slave, you're using that term unconsciously because you're still suffering from the symptom of being colonialized. You see what I'm saying? That's coming from an oppressed mind when you call your ancestors a slave. You see what I'm saying? So let's get that understood. They wasn't slaves. They were enslaved. They were political prisoners and prisoners of war, nationals from different nations and tribes. That's what you're fighting for. Even on this landmass, when they were enslaved, these were still nationals, citizens, human beings of different nations and tribes of people that were captured, political prisoners and prisoners of war. So I don't rock with the term calling your ancestors slaves. I'm not a descendant of a slave. No, I'm a new African. You see what I'm saying? Because I'm identifying myself as a national of a captured nation. I'm a citizen of a captured nation. Provisional government of Republic of New Africa is my nation. Just like you have your nation, whatever you identify with, you are a citizen and a national of that nation. A lot of bourgeoisie African Americans don't understand that. So this is why they create movements like American Descendants of Slaves. And don't even realize that's some colonial bourgeoisie slave shit. Mentally, physically, and spiritually. Because you still unconsciously disrespecting your ancestors by calling them slaves when you don't know this shit politically. See, this is the importance of political education. A lot of bourgeoisie people who identify with being African American are not politically educated at all. So that's why they make up movements like this and they call themselves slaves. And don't get me wrong, people like Queen Mother Moore, the mother of reparations, and people, back then, yes, they named them in the name, in the acronym of certain movements and titles of these movements, they had the word slaves in it. But they wasn't literally calling them slaves. You see what I'm saying? Because Queen Mother Moore and all these great freedom fighters knew better. But that, like I said, we use that word slave unconsciously. So that's why you see that word popping up in different periods of time in the struggle. You see what I'm saying? So let's just get that understood. I'm not a descendant of slaves. I'm a new African. I'm denouncing my African American identity, and I'm denouncing my American identity. I don't identify with those two terms because they're not legal, legit, indigenous terms, period. We have to fight people for reparations as a nation. As a nation. Not, you can do it in your quadres and your separate organizations. But those organizations have to be under a political body. It has to be under a political nation. You see what I'm saying? Period. You have to have a structured political body. You have to have a structured political nation to get reparations and to fight for reparations legally. Now, you can fight for reparations on your own terms and your own strategies. Nobody's not telling you not to do that, because I even do that. With the petition I got out now, I'm going to put in this description box. I'm coming from a different strategic angle, which is from slave breeding. I'm holding the state of Virginia and the United States of America and all nations that participated in slave breeding. The tyrannical sexual oppression and sexual act forced on different nations and tribes of people in slavery. Slave breeding. This actually took place. So I'm calling them out and demanding reparations on the basis of slave breeding. Sign that petition in the petition box for me. Please do so. Moving right on along. Let me get into this reparation real quick before I shut this video down. Now, this portion of the video, I'm asking people like ADOS to do your political education, your study and struggle, and overstanding. Meaning, you must pay homage to those who came before you. You should study those who came before you. There are a lot of reparational movements that took place before you. There's a history and chronology of reparations. Struggle. You need to study that. You see what I'm saying? Before you rush and try to create something that's going to be what we call reactionary. Because that's where you're headed. You're headed to a reactionary movement. You see what I'm saying? That's going to tank the interest of the Black liberation movement and the Black liberation struggle. Period. You're going to end up being reactionary, and you're going to end up going against the interests of new African people. This is pure facts. Pure facts. If you don't correct your political line. You must have a political line, ideology, and theory, and practice. You see what I'm saying? You're going to end up going against that because you're not thinking as a nation of people. Your organization is not being built under a national nationhood structure, period. So it's going to be reactionary. This is why you're going against Pan-Africans now, because you're reactionary at this point. You see what I'm saying? Because you're not studying the reparation struggle that came before you. It'll be 50 years this year. Let me get into it. James Foreman, a SNCC, who used to be with Martin Luther King, Stokely Carmichael, the best of them. He was a revolutionary fighter. James Foreman. Google him. It'll be 50 years, April 26, 1969, when the great elder, James Foreman, demanded $500 million in reparations from Christian institutions and Jewish synagogues and all religious sects for their participation in the enslavement of our people, the indoctrination of enslavement on our people, and the continuous oppression and indoctrination on our people. And the abuse that Christians, Jewish people played in the enslavement of African nations and indigenous nations of people, man. 50 years this year. In Detroit, James Foreman demanded and created the Black Manifesto at the Black National Economic Conference in Detroit. He demanded $500 million in reparations from religious institutions and sects for their role in enslaving our people and the warfare and attack on our people mentally and physically. You must know this. 50 years. James Foreman. In Cobra, the National Coalition of Blacks for Reparations in America was established 30 years ago. Look them up. They have a whole strategy and platform and structure. 30 years in Cobra. You see what I'm saying? Study in Cobra. Who's still on the front lines fighting for reparations? Conversation reparations. Make America Pay Reparations. Another new movement that is here. Make America Pay Reparations. Tap that hashtag. You'll see something. Malcolm X grassroots movement. They've been here over 20 to 30 something years fighting for reparations. Facts. You know what I'm saying? That's another movement you should study that's been here before you. The Jericho movement under the New African Independence Movement. Also fighting to free political prisoners of war and fighting for reparations. Facts. This is a reparation struggle. Let me run it all down to you. Let me run it straight down to you. Movements are the reparation struggle that you need to get, in tune with and even align with. The December 12th movement, the Uhuru movement, the Republic of New Africa, the National Black United Front, MBUF, you know them. The African People's Socialist Party, the African National Reparations Organization, NAPO, the New African People's Organization, and even, we can't leave them out, the Nation of Islam is another organization who's been fighting for reparations and land. You must identify these organizations and commemorate and honor these organizations, man. You can't detach yourself from them because that's basically spitting on, like I said in the beginning of this video, the path layers. They are path layers of this struggle for reparations, people. You must get in tune with it. Moving on down. From the beginning of time of this struggle. This struggle been going on ever since Reconstruction, the Civil War, and during slavery, and after slavery. You had Bishop M. Turner in 1890 demanding $40 billion of reparations. 1890 to 1893, you had William R. Vaughan. And this was a white man fighting for Africans' reparations for African people. 1897, the great mother, Callie House, who was fighting for reparations in 1897. 1915, she continued to struggle with our brother Cornelius Jones, who sued the U.S. For reparations in 1915 based on the federal tax of cotton. You should study that. Who else? General T. Sherman is somebody you need to study. In that reparation period of Tunis G. Campbell and the 40 acres in the mule, 40 acres in the mule, and the what's it called? I can't even think of it right now. But yeah, study that period also of Tunis G. Campbell and General T. Sherman and the 40 acres in the mule. Moving along, you had Elijah Muhammad in the 1960s fighting for reparations, for to make the government pay and give us the proper materials and resources that we needed for the 20 to 25 years till we get ourselves straight. Elijah Muhammad, go look that up. Ray Jenkins in 1963 in Detroit demanded reparations. The Malcolm X Society, I just said that, in the Republic of New Africa in 1968 demanded reparations. Silas Muhammad in 1988 demanded reparations through his organization. The Bill Conyers bill, the H.R. 40, which is still in effect today in 1989. The 1992 Ida Hakeem was fighting for reparations, man. And up to 2001, the December 12th movement. Books you can get. Reparations, yes, by Chokwe Lumumba, Imari Obadeli, Kichi Taifa. They got a book called Reparations. Yes, this is over 30-something years ago. Go get that book. My Face is Black. It's True. Callie House and the Struggle for Ex-Slave Reparations by Mary Frances Berry. Get that. See, this is this is a whole generational struggle for reparations. You cannot act like and ignore that these type of movements didn't exist. Human rights movements. It's been going on ever since we came here, people. You see what I'm saying? So that's my only problem with ADOS and movements, new movements, period, who don't recognize the path layers and the people who've been struggling for these things that you're trying to struggle for now, that the popular status quo don't recognize or don't speak upon, and who are working against the interests of these human rights organizations. Like these movements and organizations you see on TV are not these organizations. They are not these movements. You see what I'm saying? Those are bourgeoisie movements, reformist movements, who don't identify with national identity, who don't identify with reparations. You see what I'm saying? Who do not identify with total liberation and independence of a people. You see what I'm saying? And before I close out, let me just base these the principles you have to stand on and what we're fighting for in the New African Independence Movement. One is we fighting for human rights. 2, reparations. 3, self-determination. 4, ending genocide. 5, freeing political prisoners. 6, ending sexist oppression. Ending all oppression of all peoples globally. See, this is why your whole stance and fight has to be based on human rights. It's all based on human rights and national identity. This is what we're struggling for in the New African Independence Movement, man. Simple as that, man. And before I close out, since it's the 400-year anniversary of our first ancestors being brought to Virginia, and understand, when we say that, we're saying that these are the first Africans that were brought to Virginia, not the Northern American continent. You see what I'm saying? Or the Americas, period. No, this is the anniversary of the first African ancestors brought here through enslavement to Virginia. 400 years, 1619, to Point Comfort, Fort Monroe, Hampton, Virginia, not Jamestown. They did not land in Jamestown. They were not brought to Jamestown. They were brought to Point Comfort, Hampton, Virginia. Remember the 400. Go like the Facebook page, Remember the 400, on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. This is also a new movement. But this movement is identified with reparations through human rights. People, based right here in Virginia. Remember the 400, people. Never forget those ancestors. Isabella X, Anthony X. So I'm going to sign off on this note. And I wanted to get into this deeper, but this video done overlap. But this is the reparation breakdown. I'm going to come back and do a video on the reparations breakdown since I couldn't get to it today. What are the demands and what are we fighting for as far as reparations? And how do we get it? That's my next video. And then I'm coming back with another video on ideology differences that's going on amongst the black liberation struggle and the black liberation movements. I'm coming back with 2 more videos on these subjects. This is by the great, and I don't want to leave him out, Dr. Robert Brooke. Look him up. Another reparation freedom fighter. Signing off. Haki Shakur. Free the land.